And here we go. What's going on, people? Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Today is a very special day for me because I'm joined by a teaching fellow at GSA who I had to say, in no other words, is at simply the top of his game. And it's a genuine privilege to be speaking to him today. And of course, my guest today is Benjamin Furey. And I got your surname right there, didn't I? You've probably had many kinds of variations of your name over the years, because we were saying just before we came on, I was thinking, is it Furey? Is it Furey? What is it? So you're just gonna have to ask him. And thankfully, I've discovered it's Furey, as in not as like Tyson Fury, but obviously without the boxing bit. So that's pretty good. So let's introduce Ben. So I had the privilege of actually being taught by Ben for a month when I was at GSA on the MA acting course, but I've since deferred my studies and I will be going back later in the year. Well, I will link up with you again. So Ben's qualifications include an MA in Modern Drama Studies from the University of College Dublin, a PG diploma in Voice Studies from the Central School of Speech and Drama, and a little bit of background about Ben and his quite very busy career up to this point is right up until his return to the UK in 2019. He was one of the leading dialect voice text coaches in the US with over 24 years experience as a coach, consultant, and teacher. Now based in London and the US, he has worked over 125 theatre productions, including 20 on Broadway. He has spent many days on TV sets and film sets and ADR studios and on Skype, FaceTime doing production prep and rehearsal, either to groups or one-to-one. He has coached a number of Tony and other award-winning productions, including Billy Elliot, Inc., The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, Matilda, The Last Ship, A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, and the immersive Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. He has coached 7 actors to Tony Awards. That includes Greg Jabara for Billy Elliot, Gabrielle Ebert for Matilda, Michael Arnoff for Oslo, Alex Sharp for Curious Incident, and the other 3 Billy Elliots. He has worked with 4 Matildas who won special Tony Awards for excellence and with many actors on their off-Broadway and regional award-winning roles. And his credits continue. He trained as a voice text and accent dialect teacher and coach on the world-renowned Voice Studies program from the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. After graduating, he moved to Dublin, where he taught at the Guildford School of Acting and coached productions at the Gate Theatre and elsewhere for 3 years. He then relocated to the US, where he began teaching and coaching at the world-ranked BFA program and the School of Drama for the University of North Carolina School of the Arts in Salem. He spent 9 years there. In 2008, he began working on Broadway production of Billy Elliot, as well as other shows on and off Broadway. He moved to New York in 2010, where he worked as a freelance voice text, accent dialect coach until the summer of 2019, before he came back to the UK shores. His work on TV has also covered shows such as Elementary and on James Gray's film The Lost of City Z. He's been a dialect consultant for John Noble and Brian F. O'Brien and many other TV and film projects. And as a native Brit and dual citizenship, he's worked in Ireland, the UK, the US, and was the go-to coach for British and Irish dialects over in the US, and has taught other accents such as African, European, Australasian, and Asian. He has taught classes both in Europe, the US, at Juilliard College, University of Carolina, the Geordie School of Acting, Old Vic New Voices workshops in New York City, Two River Theatre, and the Guthrie Theatre in Minnesota. So, my goodness, you've been a busy man, my friend.
I was looking around thinking, who is this person? I need to meet him. I need to talk to this guy.
You. My goodness, you've done a lot of work.
It always surprises me when people introduce me and go through that. I'm going, dear God, it's a lot of stuff.
It is a lot of stuff. I was thinking, at one point, I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is, I don't know. I was thinking, right, we're going to finish that. Okay, that's all we have time for today.
Yeah.
But wow, I mean, that's an incredible body of work you've got, working over the UK, Ireland, and the US as well. And I suppose a question to kick off today really is, where did this all start? Where did an interest in voice, dialects, and the need to work with the voice, where did it all start for you? Where did it come from?
I trained as an actor way back in the last century, and one of the classes I enjoyed most was voice, but left acting school. I worked fairly consistently for a few years, probably about 90% of the time, which was nice to do. I got to a stage where I actually wasn't enjoying the work that much, because it's a business, and when you get out there, you're just not earning a lot of money.
Mm.
Um, and I sort of started I began getting depressed at the jobs I was doing in between the acting work. So I took some time off to sort of refocus and go, what else can I do, or what can I do more consistently as a side thing. As part of that, I worked at a theme park and I taught water skiing.
Oh.
And I began to realize, oh, I can teach. So then that then brought me into, okay, well, what can I teach in theatre? And I enjoyed voice and accents when I was training as an actor, and when I was an actor. And I thought there was one course where you can train at doing that, which was at the Central School, and still is at the Central School.
Mm.
And so I did that course, and that was the beginning. So after that, I went to Ireland and taught for 3 years and began coaching productions. And coaching productions was something I was always interested in when I was training as a voice teacher. So I went to Ireland, then I went to Texas, and then University of North Carolina. And I just began to do more and more of the teaching and the coaching.
What was your experience of Juilliard? Because we hear so much about the amazing graduates from there, you know, the Val Kimmels and well, I was going to say Kevin Spacey, but we're probably best not talk about him. But it's got some incredible graduates from there. What was it like working at possibly one of the most famous drama schools in the world, besides RADA and GSA?
It was actually interesting, having been at North Carolina for a long time, and North Carolina was one of the top 3 BFA programs for acting in the US as well. So it wasn't a big leap up in the level of students I was working with. The difference, I think, at Juilliard, it's had a very set training program for a long time. And what was nice was they had somebody who was taking a sabbatical, and the head of voice said, oh, would you like to come and teach for us? I said, love to. What do you want me to do? And they said, what would you like to do? Which is almost unheard of. So I actually ended up teaching them an accent class because they didn't have one, which was a surprise. They have really good speech classes. In the US, there tends to be a separation between voice and speech. If you do speech classes, which is diction, which is articulation, and sometimes it's learning what we call a professional accent. I mean, a professional accent is basically, if, say, in the US or in the UK, you come from somewhere which has a regional sound, you can pick up a professional accent and choose to use it when you choose to use it, but always have your own voice. I always use pardon me, David Tennant as an example. When he's in an interview, he is Scottish.
Yes,
that's him. He's
very
and when he does his podcast, but he can flip into standard British RP without thinking. And that's what sort of the Juilliard train people, certainly now, that's one of the things that they do, is they can flip from one to the other quite easily. I mean, the level of teacher was very good because everyone there was working outside. They were doing work in the professional theatre within New York. The other voice people, they were coaching Broadway shows as well. So sort of they were doing a lot of professional work, and being able to bring that sensibility into the classroom is actually a really useful thing to be able to do.
That's incredible. I mean, it's so unique to have that kind of insight into Juilliard and just find out. I mean, one thing you were saying there about they didn't have an accent class. I mean, I was a little taken aback by that. How could they not have an accent class at Juilliard?
I think
just create this. That'd be great. Yeah.
I mean, I think they felt that the classes they were being given in the first and second year they did a lot of IPA phonetics. They did a lot of work on this standard accent. So they'd had a lot of work with sound and looking at things like that. And I think they felt that that work, then coupled with the work they do in student productions, would be enough. Um, and they didn't notice the lack of it until I came along. And I think I did a class, and then I worked with, that was with third years, and then worked with fourth years, because both the undergrad and grad at Juilliard, they're both 4-year courses. And I worked with the third years in the class, and then the fourth years when I was coaching a production, and the fourth years complained to the why didn't we get an accent class? So they've now got an accent class. So I've given it back to them.
Good.
I mean, one thing though about Juilliard is because they are so they are what in States called, they're very well endowed, which means they have a lot of money to use for scholarships, to use for bursaries and other things. The classes are quite small. Between the undergrad and the grad class, it's 16 to 18 people as in total. So it's like 9 undergrads, 9 grads. So that's one of the biggest differences. It's a small class.
Yeah. So that brings me on to something when you said about that natural standard English in a way, and I wondered if you had an opinion on this. I couldn't help but notice that now that things are, the theatres are slowly coming back to normal now. Thank God, really, that things are showing signs of recovery now. Ian McKellen at this very moment in time is in Windsor at the moment doing Hamlet.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do that, but good luck to him. But but I would love to see it anyway. But yeah, he was him as an actor himself, Derek Jacobi, and that sort of generation of actors from the 50s and 60s who were born. Derek Jacobi was born in London, so a bit of a London accent. But for Ian McKellen, who was born in the North and had a very strong Northern accent, and was told, like, if you want to be in the classical theatre, or if you want to be in the theatre, you have to you've got to get rid of that voice. You've got to get rid of your natural voice and sound neutral standard English. And I think now people are encouraged to hold on to their accents a lot more compared to beforehand. I mean, what's your opinion of that decision to take out like the natural voice and have neutral standard English in there? Do you think that was kind of a robbery of the voice, or kind of what was expected at the time?
I think probably more at the time, more things were written to be spoken with RP than there are now. I think nowadays, writers are writing for regional voices. They're writing for all sorts of different things. I think people need to be able to do some sort of neutral standard English or RP or whatever we're going to call it these days. Because it's one of those terms, it's constantly changing. Just because there is still enough work that's out there that will call for that. And it can be a choice for people not to do that accent. I was listening to a wonderful interview, which I was searching for something online, and I found this interview with, I hope I'm getting his name right, Matthew Rhys, who's a Welsh actor, been working in the US a lot. And he was talking to the American presenter about accent, and I think it was RADA he went to. And I'm now going to go away and look all this up afterwards going, oh God, did I get it right? But he was talking about, he couldn't learn RP.
He couldn't.
He came from a village in Wales, and that was at a time when all the mines were being closed and all the miners were being put out of work.
Yeah.
And his young brain at that time equated RP with the people who were closing down his village. So psychologically, even though I think he tried, he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I found the same in Ireland, where politically, the Brits, it's a really delicate subject. And there were some students who really wanted to learn RP because it meant, well, I might be able to work in England, both as an Irish actor, but also as an actor who can sound British. But they could not shift into learning RP as an accent. And I think it was psychological. It was all about oppression. It's all about politics of voice. Wow. So I think it's important for people to go through the discussion with themselves. Do I want to learn this other accent? Um, there's an awful lot of work out there for my own voice now, and there really is. If you
Mm.
listen to the trails and promos between programs now all across British TV channels, so much of it is in regional British and Irish accents.
Mm.
You hear RP much less in that sort of role. Commercials, adverts, that so many of them are in regional sounds.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be a really good title for a book, The Politics of Voice, and like the the psychological aspects of it as
Yeah.
well. Fascinating. You know,
I mean, and there are many people who've written about the politics of this particular accent or African American vernacular English or RP. And there's a book now, I think it's Life After RP. So
like
it's,
after RP.
yeah.
I think there will be a lot. And also, I think, I don't want to shift into politics, but I'll just touch on it
Mhm.
ever so slightly. I think, RP at the moment being spoken by our illustrious prime minister at the moment about a lot of things, and the decisions that he's taken, and then the
Mhm.
last, month and a half, year and a half of our lives, and what we've all been through, and we hear that voice and we think, oh, is this like a voice of oppression? That voice coming in saying, like, enjoy your freedoms now while they last, because
Yeah.
in 2 weeks we're going to be back to where you're going to be back to where you were before. And I think that, and whenever Boris's like voice comes on the radio now, and I've seen this like in public or at home, and
Mhm.
there is a genuine philosophical, not philosophical, but there's a physical, emotional, psychological reaction to a voice. And he can just come on and just say things like, we're doing everything we can to keep everybody safe.
Yeah.
But you hear that one sentence and you're immediately thinking, you have no clue what you're doing. We don't trust you.
Yeah.
Fuck off. We don't,
Yeah.
excuse my French, but but that is, we don't care about what you said, because like they have built up this reputation of lies. And and I
Yeah.
think that sort of feeds very nicely into how you train actors to acquire a certain tone of voice, and particularly
Mhm.
when, I suppose, around the sort of darker side, when a character's trying to tell a lie in a way.
Mhm.
And even though it is a dark subject, I find that when people tell lies, they try and put like an innocent tone on it at first. And it was like, just like, it's like you could say something like, did you eat that last biscuit? And you'd be like, no, when actually
Yeah.
you did. And there's an interesting juxtaposition there between like innocence, but yeah, you're burying the lie underneath. Is that a conversation that you have in a lot of detail when you work with actors who work on scenes like that, when there's something underneath? Like if you were doing Macbeth and you were saying, you know, and Lady Macbeth has that speech where she says, I would have plucked the gums, plucked my nipple from its
Yes.
gums, and saying that, and be the, I know, and where she has that wonderful line where she says, look like the innocent flower, but be the
Yeah.
serpent under it. Is that a conversation you have a lot from a technical perspective when you work with actors, work on scenes like that?
Um. n- Only if they bring it up,
Yeah.
and only if it becomes then an issue. Either they bring it up or the director says, "Well, I want this particular vocal choice. I want it to sound as if they're telling a lie." And then we'll work out, well, how do we do that? Often though, certainly with things like Macbeth, when it's someone's telling an out and out lie, what I tend to say to people is just trust that the audience have followed everything else that's been going on, because then the lie is obvious. The lie is obvious from the situation and the scene context, and therefore don't even try and tell us it's a lie. You've got to try and convince us it's the truth.
Mm.
And that's the thing often with liars is, or people who tell a lot of lies, is they've found that if they say things with enough conviction, that it's the truth. And then we get into politics. If you say something that's a lie but say it often enough, it then becomes the truth. It's that repetition of the lie but said with conviction, as if it's the same as the sky is black. If you repeat it often enough, people will hear the words, and then it's the context of the words that the audience or the scene partner or other characters take apart the words and the text to work out it's a lie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if someone was to tell a lie, and it was, there's ways of doing it with pitch, and you can just play with, no, absolutely not, no, and just maybe use too much pitch. There are certainly ways of doing it, but it's to get the effect that the actor wants, and they say, I want to do this, but I'm not sure how, then I'll do that. Or the director says, well, I'd like this sort of mood in the scene. How can we work on that with the actor? We can play with pitch. Certainly with British accents, we can play with pitch.
Yeah, because we have a vast, I didn't realize that, we have quite a vast range of pitches at times,
Yeah.
People, I think us and Americans, we can be a bit monotonal sometimes and just speak at the same level the whole time. But we do have a good range of pitch, for British actors, don't we?
Yeah, and because most British accents will stress important words and syllables using mostly pitch. Most American accents, and this is a big generalization for both sides of the pond, will stress with volume and pitch. To be or not to be, that is the question. And it tends just to hit a little bit harder with a little bit more volume. Well, I'm to be or not to be, that is the question.
Is the question.
And the amount of pitch you use tells the person listening, whether it's an audience or in conversation, how much weight you're putting on that important word and syllable.
Yeah.
So they then hear, okay, that's the most important word in the sentence. So yeah, we tend to use more pitch, particularly when a situation is heightened. You hear people in a pub, you hear people on the street. When people are having a normal conversation, just talking about what they had for breakfast, things will flatten. But when people start getting excited, the pitch really starts to come in as people get more excited, more involved. It becomes interesting, and it's the same with American accents as well. They will use more pitch when they get excited.
That's fascinating. I think I remember I asked you a question once in one of our sessions at GSA, and I said, in terms of monotonal qualities between us and Americans, which one do you think, not being a competition or anything, but who's worse exactly? And I think, and you said, well, Ollie, we're just as bad as each other, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I think we are. Nowadays, what's happening is we have a habitual pitch range we all use.
Yeah.
When normally in speech we'll use a certain amount of pitch, unless some things get excited. Brits used to have more. We're shrinking. We're getting into using 2 or 3 notes. Actually, no, we tend to use maybe 5 or 6 notes. Some Americans will use 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Most people use about 5 or, sorry, hit my headphones. Most people use about 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear. And of course, do you think if somebody is naturally monotonal, is that, or the choices for pitch and everything, obviously it is a natural reaction, but is it also like a choice in a way that people like intend to use that? I mean, obviously it may sound like a bit of a dumb question, but is it are we unconsciously just flipping between notes, or is it more driven by an actual goal in a way? So like we know what we're doing, or we don't know what we're doing, or is it kind of a mixture of both, do you think?
Most of it is habitual and unconscious. In everyday conversation, it's habitual and unconscious, and whether we're British or American, we will change pitch because we want to stress a certain word. Our brain says that's the most important word in my sentence, in my thought. That's the word I'm going to hit. We're not conscious of that, but we do. For the meaning, our brain has the thought, and it's interesting. I mean, the ways of conveying a thought, it is writing it, and you can physicalize it, or you can speak it, are the 3 main ways. And so all we're doing with the mouth is we're articulating a thought. So the thought is set, the brain has thought it. We're not thinking about how we do it most of the time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Sometimes we do really think about what we're going to say, and there are times you can tell when people are really thinking about what they're saying as they're saying it.
Is that, have you ever been in a meeting or just talking to somebody and you can just sort of see, going, okay, so, okay, look, okay, the thing we want to, we want to express it. I want to express this in a certain way. You can just see their brain ticking. Whereas some people just go, blah, 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 and they just go, oh no, I didn't mean like that. I didn't mean like that. And there's always that thing of like, you know, that common phrase where our mouth speak, you know, we speak first, think second, or our mouth is trying to keep up with our, you know, our mouth trying to keep up with our brain, or brain to keep up with our mouth.
Mouth keeping up with the brain.
Mouth came up with the brain. Yeah. Always say first thing second. Cool. So one big question I want to ask you today is about the science of the voice, the science of the voice box, of the larynx, of the whole thing, which helps us to make noises and communicate with one another. So how does it work? What's it made up of? How does it make sound?
Okay, so what I'll do is try and avoid as much science as I can, because the podcast is only an hour, and I could spend the entire hour talking about how the larynx moves.
We can always go an hour and a half if you want to.
No, because it's multisyllabic muscles, and I always need to sort of check them before I start talking about them in class. I mean, basically, it actually comes down to impulse followed by sound. And it's about this communication. The brain has a thought that it needs to communicate with the voice. So the brain has a thought and it needs to express it through the voice. So what happens is the engine that powers the vocal communication is breath. So the brain sends muscles that control breathing. And what the brain then, it says, I need more breath, because we take breath every day. Everyone listening to this, you're sitting there, the way we breathe, the way we take breath in and out, it's completely unconscious. The brain just does that. It's the I think it's autonomic system. And I could, well, again, it's I'll have to look it up later. Go, oh, for God's sake, I said it wrong. But it's automatic. We're completely unconscious. We do it when we're asleep. When we speak, we need more air, because what happens is we use the outgoing air to create vibration, and the vibration is shaped by what's called the vocal tract to make sound. Technically, what happens is we take breath, the breath starts to come out. In the larynx, the vocal cords are brought together by muscles and cartilage, and then the vocal cords vibrate. I mean, what it sounds like, if you have a microphone down there, is, I'll be very gentle with this, it sounds like a buzz.
Yeah. And
the buzz is then shaped and moved around by the vocal tract, which is just the laryngopharynx, the pharynx, the mouth, the nose, the tongue, the lips. Because you can make a very simple sound with vibration, and everything is about as open as it can be. And then just to change things to an R to a different sound, oh. And for those who are just listening, all I did was I made my lips round, and it just changed the vowel. You can change your tongue position. I, and if you try that for yourselves, you can feel the tongue moving. Go from I, the tongue shifts position. And that's the basic of speech. That's how we make sound. Consonants, the little articulation things, are made by the lips, the tongue, the soft palate, all coming together and do all sorts of interesting and wonderful things.
Wow.
I did that in about a minute and a half.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. No, it's so interesting, because but biology was not my strong suit in school. Yeah. I hated that subject with a passion, but obviously being an actor, you know, I'm always curious to actually know more about the science behind it and everything. And no, you explained it really well. You know, it was really interesting to hear about the process to which helps us to communicate, but also to make noises and also to sing as well. I hope this next question doesn't sound a little bit like to second grade or anything, but or I sound a bit silly, but because all of us have, nobody's not like the same. Everyone has like, their own DNA. Everyone's unique, their own self. Um, but we all have kind of similar voices. Everyone speaks. A lot of people speak with RP. A lot of people speak with a northern accent. A lot of people speak West Country or Southern American or upper class New York or whatever it is. So when it comes to the voice box, is it kind of a strain of everyone having a similar voice box, or is everyone's unique in its own way, and it's up to the environment in which we are in to shape how we sound?
I mean, pretty much we all make sounds the same way, which is that vibration in the larynx, shaped, and the sounds coming out. There are some languages which make sound on in-breath, which are they're click sounds. There's a number of them in some of the African tribal languages. I believe one of them, if I'm going to get it right, and I apologize if I don't, Osa, which is spelled Xosa. If you had to put it into Roman script, English script, but the sound that would be the sound of it, and that's a Southern African one. So then you can add things on in breath as well. But most English sounds are made with the sound on the out breath. So yeah, we all have the same instruments. It's just how the accents decide to use them. I mean, people's voices have different voices with they can have exactly the same sounds with an RP, but will sound different. And sometimes it's just due to the shape of the mouth, how long the vocal tract is. Sometimes some people, if they have their teeth changed or teeth fixed, it changes their voice. It changes the tone of the voice, because if you think of it, it's like an instrument. If you chopped a trumpet about a bit and shortened something or put a dent in something or made a different bulge, it would change the sound of a trumpet. Same way with our articulation. If you lose all your teeth, that will change things. If you think of trying to speak when you've had some, again, dental work, and you've had anesthetic and your lips don't move very much, that changes the sound of the voice. Is that because the lips aren't moving as much, it changes the sound. So yeah, we all have the same tools, but it's all put together in slightly different ways.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I sort of have a naturally tight jaw. My jaw doesn't move as much as other people, and I had that pointed out by someone who used to teach it at GSA, someone called Katie Heath. Hi, Katie. And I just thought, is that common to have a tight jaw? And how does that affect vocal patterns? Am I in trouble?
You're not in trouble. Many people have tight jaws. Some of it is just physical. Again, big generalizations. People who live in very cold climates, and some people who live in hot climates with a lot of insects around, tend to keep the jaw fairly closed, because in cold climates you don't want the cold to go in, and in some hot climates you don't want to be breathing in maybe insects or other things. Other things can happen. Some people grind their teeth at night. And if people grind their teeth at night, what will tend to happen is the big muscles of the jaw will tend to shorten or get tighter. And it can happen on one side and not the other. Other things that can happen is psychologically people hold almost as a mask. They are reluctant to let sound out because it's scary.
Yeah.
Some people hold their jaws because they may have been either abused as a child and hit, or they had a jaw injury, and they just hold everything because they don't want to open, or they can't. It's lots of things happen.
Yeah, and again, it's the not only is it the physical, but it's the psychological as well, which is
Yeah.
fascinating. Let's see. I'm just going to have a look at my questions here. We sort of rambled quite through these. Uh, so yeah, just to go back to the well, actually no, I'll do this one first. Um, there's always a bit of debate as to, you know, because where performers, when they before they go on stage, they always do a vocal warm up, and you know, just doing scales, just doing a little bit of, you know, whatever. Yeah, as such, is there a warm down that artists should go through once they've come off stage? And also, what would you say was a really good treatment? Because a lot of people have vocal zones, some people have throat tea, some people have, you know, they have honey, which they helps to soothe the throat. So yeah, so what's the best way of sort of derobing your voice after the show?
Even before we get to the warm down, not all actors warm up,
Oh,
which frustrates the heck out of me, because
yeah.
classical singers, they treat their voice like an instrument. They will always warm up. Most people in musical theatre will warm up their voices. There are some actors who just don't, which drives me nuts. But then coming to warm down, if someone is doing a part which involves a lot of vocal extremes, like shouting, screaming, wailing, anything that involves what we call a vocal extreme, I will strongly suggest to them that they do a warm down after a show, which can involve humming, going up and down in pitch, sirening up and down in pitch on a hum, on an M or an N or an NG, slowing the body down, because the brain will be working 19 to the dozen often. With adrenaline, everything just rockets along, and it's just getting the body and the brain just to sort of slow down and center before going on and doing anything else. It depends on the vocal demands of the show. As for the warm down, if people have got things like teas, I will sometimes get people to do those when voices are tired. Sometimes they can help. I'll have people. I've had shows where I've been phoned by the stage manager, and I've had to go off and buy a steamer for an actor who's on. One example is the Broadway show. One of the Broadway shows I was doing, I went and bought a steamer for the actor, because unless I did that, they had a vocally demanding role. They would not have been able to get through the performance. And this is an actor who did warm up, who did warm down, and who did look after their voice. It's just they just got a laryngitis. That happens. I've also worked with people who aren't trained performers, and they have to do a big show. And I just said to their people, when the few times I can say that, I said to their personal assistant, we need to get a big humidifier for the room so the voice, at least before the beginning, is warmed up. So there'll be things I'll suggest, have some water on stage or some tea on stage with them, so that they can just keep the voice going.
Wow.
Because
there was Richard Armitage did John Proctor a few years ago at the Old Vic, and that was if it's available on digital theatre to watch on demand now. So if anyone wants to see it, I strongly recommend you have a look. To do what he did 8 times a week, his interpretation of Proctor was very, particularly towards the end in Act 4, when he has the line, "Because it is my name." He took it very. You could definitely hear him. Let's put it that way. He was very. I don't want to sound. He wasn't screechy, but he was definitely shouting it out, like he was like coming from a point of just dire frustration, grief, just like desperation, because like he's on his knees, he's signed a confession which he didn't want to sign, and his interpretation was that he came out with just all guns blazing and just completely bellowing the whole time, saying, "How dare you do this to me? How dare you do this?" And there was an interview with one of his cast members where she said that at the end of the show, pretty much every night, especially on a 2-show day as well, that his dressing room table would just be full of vocal zones, throat to pee, and just everything. It'd be like a vocal recovery bar at his table every night. And and I suppose with performances like that, and like you said, opera singers and stuff like that, and of course with singers in the charts like Adele and Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran and people like that, you hear about some of them actually having severe trouble with their vocal cords, having cysts on their vocal cords, and they've had to have surgery. And there's always been that risk of, if you do have this surgery, there's a very good chance that you might not sing again or be able to speak properly. And Stephen Hawking had a similar surgery, which sadly cost him his voice, and and he had to speak through a computer for the rest of his life. But in terms of, so how does that come about when you've like vocal cyst? Is it just the fact that it's just so much strain on the voice, and eventually is it like its way of like digging its heels in and just saying, look, enough is enough, or is it a natural thing?
With pop singers, many of them haven't done any vocal training, so they don't know how to produce their voice so they can do it on a regular basis, night after night after night for 2 hours. And with a pop singer, if you're doing an hour and a half to 2 hour show, you are the singer. And there's many other things to do as well. Is they need to be able to hear themselves, but often they don't use their breath as efficiently as they could. So what happens is, to get the volume or to get the work, they're using tension in the vocal cords, which means the vocal cords come together, and it's almost it creates like a hard cyst. It's like a rubbing almost, where they come together hard. They should come together quite softly. Instead of, the more tension there is, they come together in a more they get more tense and they come together hard rather than soft, and that creates the place of swelling and then the cyst and nodule. And it can happen to the best people. It happened to Julie Andrews, who had an operation, and she basically doesn't sing now. The operation wasn't successful in that she didn't come out with a voice that she can use.
Wow.
And that she was doing a very difficult show 8 nights a week, and did all her technique and warm up, and it ended up probably being too much.
Well, I didn't know that. And it's right, because you don't really hear her. She didn't sing much after The Sound of Music, and
no,
but
it was after Victoria on Broadway.
Oh, really?
That was the show that did that. And I don't know that she developed it, and sometimes these things will disappear with rest, so you can actually take 6 months and really not talk very much, or at all, and sometimes the vocal swellings will go down. But often it comes from either a lack of training or approaching, for actors, it's approaching a moment of really heightened vocal use and not working out for themselves, okay, how am I going to do this to keep myself safe? And sometimes I'll say to an actor, you have to actually step out from being the character and think of, okay, how am I preparing for this safely? What is the intention that's going to help me be able to do this with a minimum amount of tension? I was called into work on King Kong on Broadway. And I just went in and did one session with the young woman who's playing Furey. And she's going to have to scream up to 8 times a week for, I think it's about 5 minutes. And that's a really hard thing to do.
Wow.
And I was trying to help the director and other people say, look, well, this is stuff this is what she may need to help her. And they didn't, the producers and the director, because then they don't think like we as actors or we as voice people do, they didn't realize it was that much work and what they were asking her to do.
Wow. In the fact that she had to scream 5 minutes 8 times a week.
8 times a week.
And it's not just a little it's
full-throated. I've just seen a 30-foot gorilla scream.
Oh,
It's
goodness.
yeah.
I mean,
Directors will ask a lot of actors. Um, the hardest thing right now is I'm hearing from people who do video games, actors who record voice for video games. Directors, producers are making them do so many vocal extremes for 7 hours a day.
yeah.
People are wrecking their voices and potentially ruining their careers because the directors want all these things and aren't willing to say, well, let's just do 10 minutes of that. They want it all day.
No, is famous examples of Gary Oldman, Kiefer Sutherland, Tom Hanks, Tim Allen.
Mhm.
You know, those last two on Toy Story, famously. Tom Hanks tells a story that you know, he'll be in the vocal booth and he'll been doing like his 6th or 7th hour of just going, and
Yeah.
as we all know, Woody is just just this larger than life character. He doesn't seem to have a quiet moment in any Toy Story film, and when it does, it's very, very short. But he said that, yeah, but in his words, he said that you do it to the point where your diaphragm is busted, your throat is raw, the,
Yeah.
the copy has just disintegrated because you've just spat all over it, and these guys are just in the booth. Have probably never done any vocal training, probably don't know anything about it. They haven't spoken to you, they haven't spoken to anyone who knows this stuff,
Yeah.
and they're just sitting there going, okay, well, should we ask him to do it again? How much time we got? Another couple of hours. We've got another couple of hours. Oh, yeah, it'll be fine. It's like, hey Tom, let's get another 2 hours. And he's there going, I can't do it. You know, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about? Because I always get a bit. Because Hugh Jackman talked about this when he did Les Mis a few years ago. That when he was on a rest day, he would have vocal rest days because he was singing pretty much all day, every day. And he said that he would sort of turn into a monk once a week where he wouldn't talk. And then I don't know if that was just like a little Hollywood story or something like that. But do people do that?
People do that. The person I was talking about who lost their voice on Broadway when I went and bought them the steamer, they were outside the show basically not talking.
Wow.
And Monday, and they said Monday is a day off from the show, but I don't go and talk to people. I don't go and celebrate after the show. I don't go and do all these other things. This is how I'm earning my living, my voice, and I have to look after it. And I know if I don't, I won't survive.
Yeah. And we all need to communicate. We all need to all have a voice. And just touching on something now, I rewatched The King's Speech recently, and about, as we all know, it's about speech therapy and having others overcome a stammer. I suppose stammer is a psychological thing as well. But in King George VI case, it was more he had his childhood wasn't great. He didn't have a good relationship with his father or his brother. His brother left him completely in the shit when he married Wallis Simpson and said, okay, I'm not going to be the king, go do it yourself. I'm going to go off and be with my American girlfriend and completely just leave everything. So there is that psychological aspect to it as well. Can people be born with stammers, or is it a product of environmental things?
I think it's a product of environment, but I don't know enough. I'm not a speech language pathologist enough to be able to say I know what it is.
Okay, no, that's okay. I just thought I'd throw that out. See if
I mean, I've worked with people on stammers, and often it will be clear enough in the text, or we work out, okay, this is why the person stammers, but why it happens and on what consonants, we don't know. Often it's to do with stress and a lot's going on in the brain, but it's a hard thing, and when people actors should think a lot about why the person's stammering before stammering, because it can sound stereotyped, and it's a little the right word is not coming to my brain at this time. Condescending. It's condescending to the character to do this, the stereotype stutter, and sometimes it's the brain can't find the words and the mouth is just trying to, it's all sorts of things. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's quite a nice sort of link into when you're trying to communicate or you're trying to get the words out and your brain's
Yeah.
thinking about all these different words and you end up just going and it's that I think that is a lovely moment where you see a human brain just go where all the like a house of cards it just falls down
Yeah.
and going, right, let's try that again and we pick ourselves up and do that. Cool. So I just how much time we have? We've still got a bit of time. I just got a couple more questions for you, if I may.
Sure.
So we talked a lot about this science and you know now about stammers and vocal cysts and like looking after your voice. Just to go back to yourself and your experiences of this of working, you've worked with hundreds of actors over the years, and if that's okay to say.
Yeah.
And I suppose I was thinking about today and thinking about because of the amount of people you've seen and the people you've worked with and the places that you've been. Um, is there one like success story that you have or someone you worked with where you went into a room, you went into rehearsal with somebody and they've gone to you, Ben, I'm really struggling here. I don't know what to do. I can't get my voice to do this. I can't get my voice to do that. But then after you've worked with them, they've gone into a show and just gone apps and just completely knocked it out of the park. And that's made like a very, very proud teacher moment or coach for moment for yourself. Is there any one or two stories that stick out like that? Something that you're a success story which you're
Mhm.
incredibly proud of to this day that you'll never forget.
It's hard to think of one or two, actually.
Seven.
Um, Seven. I can think of seven. Um, I mean, I'm proud of the work I did with the kids in Billy Elliot and Matilda.
Yeah.
And it's not one, it's just getting these people who've never done acting voice in their lives to be able to shift their accent to a completely different thing for them.
Hmm.
Um, and it's the I just being able to watch them do things and be proud that yes, you really sound as if you are British, and to have reviewers of Matilda saying, "I can't believe these children aren't British," um, and that's a nice thing to do because I really am working with people who've never done any of this work before. Um, to how to and again with the small Matildas, I had to teach them to speak Russian. There's a scene where they speak Russian
Yes.
to a Russian guy. They come in. He's a Russian mafia, but he bought some cars off Matilda's dad, and the cars were broke down, and he's coming to do some nasty damage to the guy. And Matilda stops him by speaking Russian. And I taught them Russian from day one and they loved doing it. It became it became the sort of like sweet treat at the end of the accent session to speak Russian. And one of them came up to me and said, "This woman stopped me at the stage door and said, 'Are you Russian?'" And I said, "No, we're not." I said, "Because you sound as I'm Russian and you sound as if you're Russian." And when they said to this, I'm going, "Yes." Um, just because it's just one of those things that to do something that audiences like or listen to and are convinced by,
Yeah.
that's always and to do an accent with say American actors and it's a British accent and it's this is Geordie, and to have Geordie people come to the show and then come talk to the cast afterwards and saying that was really quite good,
Yeah.
and for Brits to say that about Americans doing British accents is quite unusual.
Yeah.
um it's little things like that. It's nothing huge more. I mean, there are, but to work with someone on an English accent and they've since gone on to have Oscar nominated careers, and the show they worked on with the English accent was their breakthrough. But ultimately, it's about the actor and not about me. Because it's a sort of, I can give them the stuff, but then they have to do it. And I can say, yeah, I've done a little bit towards you being up there where you are, but it's a little bit.
Yeah, but it's part of their journey, though. That's part of
It's part of the journey, and it's a small part. Yeah, but yes, it's nice.
Good. I mean, and that's I just like you're saying just now. You know, you're asking American kids to learn a Geordie accent, and that. I mean, you did it. You've done it. But you know, I can't imagine American kids on like the first day of rehearsals hearing them say like, "Why, I man? What's going on?" And you're just there going, "This is how they speak."
Yeah,
And they're going, "What is this?" Like, but
yeah. I think it's more the American adult actors were saying, "What is this?" The kids just do it. They're
yeah,
kids. They've got their ears are so much. They're more plastic orally than we are as adults generally.
yeah.
They generally pick up things more quickly. They lose it more quickly. So that's why I have to keep going in every 2 weeks or every week to give them notes. But the adults, it's harder for the adults usually.
Yeah, it's like, here we go, me again. Let's go back to
Yeah,
Geordie. And they're like, I do have it. It's like, well, we've got to get it back. We've got to get it
yeah,
back.
exactly.
Cool. And then I just think just finally today,
Mm-hmm.
final question. I was going to ask you about for like performer, like people applying for drama school stuff like that, but that's a bit of a niche question now, sort of really sort of cliche. I think it's just if someone is going for drama school and like doing this sort of thing, they need to just feel relaxed and at ease. And that's something that you talked to us about as well, just feel relaxed and feel eased when you're training.
Mm-hmm.
And that and what you want to achieve will come a lot more naturally. And this is something I'm still learning myself, is just to go into the room and just almost like surrender to the vibe, you know, to the feeling in the room, and just let things happen naturally, and not, you know, don't let your inner voice or inner critic just be at you all the time and just say, look, you've got to get it right, you've got to get it right, you've got to get it. Just back, you know, you have to just tell that to just to shut up and just say, look, we're here to learn from the room, and we're here to. And I think, Grania at GSA does a lot of work on Michael Chekhov and the feeling of ease, and just, I think actors learn more about themselves and do the best job when they're just at their most relaxed, and not, you know, if they want to hit that note that which they always wanted to hit and they're relaxed, they can do it. It's an easier road. If you want to get that scene the way you want to do it and you're relaxed, it's an easier road. And with the vocal chords as well, would you agree with that?
Oh, completely. My wife is also she's a voice and Shakespeare teacher, and so when we go to shows, we what we love to do is go to shows and then be able to come out and say, "Oh, that was really nice," this and to not be watching it technically and making mental notes,
Yeah,
but to have that just wash over and just sit in the back of that
I do the same.
2%.
I do the same.
Yeah, that's that 2% of the actor when they're working is aware of actor working. Pick up the phone at this moment because that's a cue. To watch something and just have that little, okay, it's going to go in the background. We saw Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, and I think it was like a double bit. It was like a reps thing they
Yeah,
were doing with Pinto.
it was No Man's Land and Waiting for Godot, wasn't it?
Waiting for Gower.
Yeah.
We saw the No Man's Land, and the two of them, no matter how heightened the scene was, they were so relaxed.
Yeah.
Even when the scene demanded tension, there was the tension, but it was no more than the scene demanded. And there was just this relaxation in what they were doing. Watching a relaxed actor working, even when the character's getting uptight, you know it's a real person doing it, when so many actors will work too hard.
Mm.
And it's all about the effort rather than the and to quote a great small green philosopher, do or do not, there is no try. It's a quote, it's a Yoda quote, but it's absolutely true. You can either do it or don't do it and you fail, but it's the trying, it's the effort that sometimes gets in the way, because effort involves too much tension, too much trying, and can stop us actually hearing what's being said to us, because everything we say comes from an impulse. Something happens and we respond. So somebody says something to us and we respond. Sometimes as actors, we learn our lines and we say the lines, but we're not actually listening to what's being said to us. We're not doing the response. When we're relaxed, we can actually respond. We call it talking and listening, which is conversation. We talk and listen in conversation. It's when we know what we're going, because we've learned the lines, we know what's happening. We're not framing our response to what someone's saying. We forget that we're actually responding.
Yeah. That's the key. That's the key.
And to watch the best actors, that's all they do. And to watch somebody really, you can watch people listen. I'm going to now drop another name we saw. We saw David Hyde Pierce do Labette with Mark Rylance. Mark Rylance opens the show and it's a Mark Rylance monologue of about 10 or 15 minutes, I think. And David Hyde Pierce is sitting on stage and you can see that he's listening.
Yeah.
For 15 minutes. And that is so hard to do as an actor, but it's that whole sense of listening and responding.
Yeah.
It's nice to watch that.
Yeah, that's one big lesson I really took away from yourself and the other guys at GSA was it's listening. You know, it's not just reacting. You're not just sitting there. Okay, we've got 2 lines to go. He's got 1 line to go. Okay, now here's my cue. No, it's like listen to what they are saying, and then that in turn helps you get better. And then your reaction becomes a lot raw and much more authentic to the situation, which is at the end of the day is what you want to be. You want to be raw, you want to be authentic, you want to be believable. You want people to walk out of the theater or walk out of the cinema and say, wow, that I've just witnessed a really fantastic piece of acting there. I totally believed him from the word go. And that's, you know, if that is the review, I'm like yourself, like when they thought the kids were Russian and they were surprised when they weren't, it was like, you know, it was that moment. And you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask you about that production because I was lucky enough to catch that production of Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart at when they came to London to do it. I think you saw it on Broadway, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. And when they came to London and saw it, it was not only was it just I'll be totally honest, I only went because it was Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. I didn't know anything about Pinter and know anything about, but what an introduction, because it was those 2 actors who knew Pinter, you know, who actually did work with him. And, you know, I can talk about Pinter for ages, so I'm not going to go off on one now, but it was so lovely to hear the voices and to see that mysterious nature of it. And I remember at the interval, I just suddenly had all these ideas in my head and I was just going, okay, this plays about this plays about that, this plays about this. And it was all from just the passion, the determination and the hard work and the relaxation and feeling and easiness that was emanating from Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, who they know how this works. They've been doing this for a very long time and it shows. And that was a beautiful, beautiful night in the theatre. And to hear and on that note, I think that is a lovely point to end. So Ben, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for taking me through the science, the technical aspects, the emotional aspects of not only training your voice, but finding your voice and using it for the right purpose. And I've learned so much in the hour that we've been going. It's been so much fun. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to, you'll still be at GSA next year, right?
I hope so.
Well, hopefully
hopefully.
So I'll see you hopefully in person in class from October, and I look forward to catching up with you then.
I'll see you in October.
Exactly. Cool. If you just hang around, I'll just say goodbye to you one-to-one after I finish the recording and go from there. But once again, man, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.